I want to take it a different direction in this video. I want to talk about some BKFC action. My God, does Platinum Mike Perry thrive in that environment? I don't know what it is about BKFC versus the UFC that changes things so much for him. I have a couple ideas, but first I want to put some context on this video. In the UFC, Perry was a batting average fighter, 14-8, and you see when he got to that top level of competition, the top shelf, Vicente Luque, Cowboy Cerrone, guys in that conversation, he ultimately came up short, but he does have also some really good wins over guys like Mickey Gall, Jake Ellenberger. Point still stands though, is that we don't look to Mike Perry in the UFC to see like a top level guy, but in BKFC, he just won the belt and absolutely mauled Eddie Alvarez to the point where I think he went blind for a short period of time in that fight. So what's the disconnect there? Two things off the bat I could think of. Boxing, right? I've watched a lot of Perry footage. Boxing is usually his strongest skill set, though he did have some semi-decent kickboxing. It's going to sound super obvious for fans of the channel for me to say this, but obviously when you have less to worry about in the hands and the feet department and the elbows, like in Muay Thai or in MMA, you're going to do better. That's excluding people that have training in certain disciplines, let's just say a Muay Thai or a Jiu-Jitsu guy coming into boxing. Obviously that's different, but Perry has an all-around MMA fundamental background. You're not in the UFC, you're not at the top level unless you do train boxing to a certain extent, so obviously Perry is going to have that in his back pocket. Obviously a guy like Eddie Alvarez is going to have that in his back pocket, and obviously a guy like Chad Mendes, right? All these guys gonna have that in their back pocket. The person that arguably did the worst in crossovers from MMA to BKFC was, guess who? Luke Rockhold. Why? Luke Rockhold doesn't have solid fundamental boxing. He's much more of a jiu-jitsu guy, and he has some of the flashiest and the most exciting to watch technical kickboxing in the game. So obviously, to get that one off the bat, that's, I mean, almost goes without saying as to why Perry would have at least a minimal amount of success in BKFC. But it goes deeper than that. Like I said, most of these guys in MMA have had solid boxing training under their belts, and it's not uncommon, especially now with the Tyson Fury fight and Francis Ngannou, for us to see MMA guys actually being pretty serviceable in boxing. Anderson Silva looked really good in all of his pro bouts, even against Jake. I know he got dropped. We don't talk about that. But you know what? There's doing well, and then there's doing how Mike Perry is doing. Mike Perry seems to kind of be like a shelf up from the rest of the competition. He's unarguably BKFC's biggest star. Just took home a win over Eddie Alvarez, who, for my money in MMA, would have absolutely smoked Perry. And so I don't think we could just chalk that up to boxing alone. Guys, also, by the way, I'm in a new apartment. I just bought this, so I'm having to kind of, do this with a blank wall behind. It's going to get better, point is what I'm saying. Now, my second instinct would be to say that Perry's fighting style lends itself very well to a BKFC type of environment. You saw in the UFC, while he never kind of found himself out of position quite frequently, he was always a volume and a pressure guy, and a guy that would constantly be walking you down, looking to drop shots, constantly, keeping in front of his opponent, blading, cutting off the octagon. That style in BKFC, I would argue, is not only fundamental to winning a fight, but guys that have had that type of experience, that base, and anyone that's willing to participate in something as brutal and as dangerous as bare knuckle fighting will have that component to their game and do very well with it in their arsenal. You see, Platinum Mike Perry, and I mean, for those that just watch boxing, go watch any of his press conference highlights. He's 2% African, so he says the N-word, like that type of vibe, that type of nuts.
I took a DNA test, and the results came back French and German, British and Irish, and I was 2% African. So I am legally allowed to say the word nigga.
He's a wild man. So I think he kind of fits like a puzzle piece in perfectly with BKFC in that sense. So now you can say, okay, Jake, well, we have two of the reasons why Platinum Mike Perry is really, really good in BKFC. We could probably stop there, right? Wrong. We have not yet seen someone put on an entertaining fight the way Platinum Mike Perry does every time he steps in there. He chips Luke Rockhold's teeth. He went toe-to-toe with MVP. Now he's gone toe-to-toe with Alvarez. And sure, you could say he carries the name with him, but I can't think of anyone else that pushes the pace like him in BKFC and makes the most out of these big moments like him in BKFC. The truth is, and this is my best hypothesis, feel free to disagree or agree in the comments, is that in a sea of violence that this beautiful and upcoming sport presents, Mike Perry is a great white shark. Yes, it was perfect timing. Yes, his style matches up perfectly with the promotion. But what Platinum Perry has done, and I want to make this very, very clear, is seize the opportunity to be great, to make a ton of money, to put on exciting fights. You see, Mike Perry, on a glance, you wouldn't think that he's necessarily a Harvard graduate. I'm not saying he's dumb or stupid by any means, but he's not the guy you would, I think, look to and say, okay, that guy has a long-term plan for what he wants to do. The truth is that Perry, for all the shit that anyone can give him about being wild, about being this boisterous guy that doesn't think things through when he says it, has arguably made one of the best, again, in a sea of different people that are doing this in the combat sports scene: Jake Paul, Francis Ngannou, Tyson Fury. Mike Perry stands out as a guy that has made a smart investment into himself, not physically, but career-wise, again, in a sport right now, or I should say combat sports as a whole, that are absolutely exploding. Without further ado, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Deuces.